Welcome to the first webinar of EPNoSL VIP, that is the virtual platform of the European Policy Network on School Leadership. My name is Nóra Révai and I'm going to host this session today. EPNoSL VIP is a series of programs that include webinars and forum discussions on different topics of school leadership. Forum discussions are going to take place on the EPNoSL portal. I'm going to put you the link to that on the screen. And you will also find the full program of the virtual platform here on this link. All activities are open to anyone who is interested, and if you also wish to contribute to the discussions, you just need to register on the portal. Our first topic is the autonomy of schools, and today we are going to address this topic with the help of two speakers, Hasso Kukemelk from Estonia, the University of Tartu, and Verboon from the Netherlands, from ESHA, the European School Heads Association. Next week, the first forum discussion will start on the same topic, and is going to be based on a keynote article by Leif Moos from Denmark. And before I introduce you our speakers, and before we start, let me just show you some features of this webinar platform. So you will always see the person who is speaking, so it's me now. The other web cameras and microphones will be inactive. And at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it on the screen as well, there's a chat box where you can communicate, and after the two presentations there will be an open discussions and you will be able to ask your questions in the chat box. There is also a whisper function. If you select it from the drop-down menu and instead of say you select whisper, then the other drop-down menu is activated and you can choose which participant you wish to send your private message to. At the bottom left-hand corner, you have some emoticons or feedback. It's the give feedback button that you can use. So let's test it. Can you give me some feedback now? Maybe that you need a coffee break immediately, or that I should go faster or slow down. So can you choose? Okay, I can see that some people have chosen. Okay, I will slow down. There is one feedback, and the others also try the feedback button. It's the bottom left-hand corner. I can see. Okay, I have more and more feedback. If you want your feedback to disappear, you just have to click again and set the I am fine button, and then your feedback will disappear. Great, thank you. So another important information is that the webinar is going to be recorded, and the session will then be published on the EPNoSL portal as well. So I suggest that you follow all our programs if you are interested on the portal, on the address, the link that I posted in the chat box there. Okay, so let us now start. We will have two presenters today, Hasso Kukemelk from Estonia and Verboon from the Netherlands. Can we see you, Hasso and Fred, for a second? Yeah, we can see Hasso. And Fred, hello. Can you say hello as well? Here we have Fred as well, thank you. And so the first presenter is Hasso Kukemelk, who is an associated professor of educational management in the University of Tartu, Estonia. He has fulfilled several managerial positions in his life. He was vice principal of a high school, head of Department of Research and Institutional Development at the University Administration, acting Dean of the Faculty, and head of the Institute of Education. His research interest has been school management and educational leadership during the last years. He is the author of more than 80 research publications. So Hasso, the floor is over to you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, hello to everybody, and it's nice to meet you here from small town in Estonia, what is sunny and nice place to start webinar. Today's theme is about school autonomy. What is school autonomy and autonomy as a general? If we use our common resources, Wikipedia most common one, then it gives us two explanations. First of all, autonomy, it is in moral and political philosophy often used as the basis for determining moral responsibility for one's action. But if we go to our everyday life, then quite often, according to the Wikipedia, we explain it like self-government of a people. If we try to translate it into school context, then it could be like options for the school, how much different decisions can be done on school level by the school head, financial decisions, personnel decisions, educational decisions. So it's all things related to the autonomy. If we speak about school autonomy, then Glenn and Groove, they deliver it into two fields. One is school autonomy from state, and another is school autonomy from school owner. Quite commonly, these two are sometimes the same, sometimes not the same bodies. In many countries, ordinary schools belong to the state. In some countries, schools belong to the local communities, and then there are differences from belonging to the state. And also we have schools which belong to some private entities, for example to the church or any private person or any other organization. So there could be very different school owners. If we speak autonomy from state, then quite important things are related to the legislation. What kind of legislative acts we have and what has been determined by these legislative acts. What is left on school level and what is taken somewhere more upper level of decision-making ledger. For example, national curriculum, national and regional developmental plans can be key questions here. How much those things describe school activities and school's everyday life. And also it creates question, what are those fields where decision-making is possible to do on school level by the school head, for example. If we speak about school owner, then the question, mostly in the context of local community, then the question is how independent could be school to make those decisions, mostly related to the educational process, but also related to the personnel and financing questions, and real estates also. So autonomy from school owner is also quite important thing, and we have to consider that this autonomy is different from the autonomy of state. We can deliver schools generally into two groups. First, schools with limited autonomy, and another one, schools with large autonomy. If we speak about schools with limited autonomy, then quite often state or local community sets school curriculum, mostly state. For example, national curriculum says what is content of lessons and what kind of textbooks or workbooks school should use, or any other learning materials. Another question is school financing. there are countries, even here in Europe, where school financing has been determined quite exactly by the state, and money is coming directly to school, and every euro has label that this is for the salary, this is for the equipment, this is for in-service training courses, and almost nothing to do by the school to decide how to use those finances. The same with school personnel. Here in Europe we have countries like Greece, for example, where people who like to apply for teacher's job, they register at the ministry or special agency at the ministry to get teacher's job, and then this general body delivers those teachers to the schools. So school itself can do nothing to get the teacher. They just will see, oh, we got that person or another person to that position, and then school teachers and then school managerial team should be able to handle with that personnel what they have. School's physical environment is also quite often then determined by the upper level forces, and the school heads mostly can influence when and how those things could be used, but generally not much to do with that. And also rules to collaboration with families and other school stakeholders. Here we can raise question of school board, how powerful is school board and what are duties of a school board to make decisions and to develop a nice learning environment in school. So as conclusion to the limited autonomy, I would say that in this case, school head is mostly administrative leader operating with human and financial resources, but with some other resources also under the fixed frames, and very limited flexibility for the head. And for the head, it's limited power and limited responsibility. From one side, it's not bad because such kind of systems provide always at least certain minimum level educational quality. If we go to the schools with large autonomy, so-called educational freedom, then it's quite common that schools develop themselves their curricula and learning environment. It means that schools have final goals what to achieve, and then they have to find their own way how to reach to that goal. It means much developmental work inside school by teachers and managerial team. Schools plan their financing, but it means that they usually get lump sum financing from state or local community, and you have to make your own decision where and how to spend your money. And from the other hand, it means that, oh, if we want to be a good school, then we should be very active in fundraising. And it means that certain time, certain funds and manpower has been spent for fundraising to get more money. So it's like additional field of school activities in that case. Schools with large autonomy quite commonly choose their personnel and quite often discuss job contract contents and working conditions where teachers should work. And it means that personnel work is not starting when first-time teachers gather together in the school building, but it starts already when they set up advertisement to the media that, oh, we are looking for some vacancies, and to describe what kind of people the school likes to apply for that job. So it's completely different field of actions for the school. Schools' developmental plans in large autonomy play a very important role, because all actions and all school improvements are based on these developmental plans. It means that developmental plan itself can't be formal document, but it should be really very well worked through, thought through, and it should support school culture and school ideology. And it means that much energy and mental efforts should be done to that direction. And schools also plan quite often, and not only plan but carry out collaboration with different stakeholders, with school board, with parents, with different private firms in the local area, just to get wider society background and understanding. And it means that school head in that case has high decision-making power and very high responsibility, because usually responsibility lies on the level where decisions have been done. So in last case, decisions have been done on school level. It means that responsibility is on school level. In first case, decisions have been done in higher levels, and it means that responsibility is there. So personality of school head and pressure to school head in this last case is much higher than in first case. There are sometimes some funny stories what are related to this autonomy. I remember from my own practice from Soviet period that we ordered metalwork equipment for classroom for boys. And we ordered it first time, nothing came. Year later we repeated our order, nothing came. Third year we repeated our order, and then suddenly there was a big truck in our yard, and there were many working places. And metalwork teacher came to me and said, "Hasso, what we are going to do now? There are 3 classrooms of equipment, but we have only 1. So 2 other schools in the city were happy to get new equipment also. But as limited autonomy, it means that somebody somewhere up interpreted our orders so that, oh, first year they ordered just a small part, next year small part, now it's full track and now we can fulfill their order. It means that small autonomy sometimes means also communication and thinking. What does it mean? What is coming downstairs and where we can make decisions? Are these decisions made on proper way and on real basis or not? I'm sure that different persons can speak about different quite funny stories. And for me, it raises a question. Is school autonomy a challenge for the head, or it is a privilege for the school head? Because in some cases, yes, responsibilities going up to the ministry level, but you can decide small things and schools are not depending so much from you. And in other case, yes, you can decide much, but you are very much responsible and your stress level is really high. Thank you, and let's discuss about that later on.
Thank you very much, Hasso, for introducing the topic and setting the scene. I think it was a very clear introduction. And now I'll ask Fred to give his presentation. So just a few words about Fred. He is the director of the European School Heads Association. He is also the founder and former owner of the Microsoft Innovation Center in the Netherlands. In 2009, Fred decided to focus on education. Currently, he is responsible for the ESHA office and focuses on innovation of education. So, Fred, the floor is over to you.
Okay, thank you, Nóra. and also a warm welcome from sunny Amsterdam. So thank you, Hasso, for your presentation. I'd like to take a little bit of a broader perspective and talk to you from the position of the school heads, what he has encountered. So not only focusing on autonomy, but also focusing on the different learning systems that you need to be adapted to the digital age. So that's also my first slide. I have 14 slides, a little bit much for a presentation of 14 minutes, 15 minutes, but I won't go through into great detail about all these slides. So let's start. So if you look at the reason why we're here is that we're all interested in education. We want to improve education, and if you look from the school head's perspective, the first real change is, of course, autonomy, but also is regards to the changing economies that we are a part of. If you look at our economies that are changing, so for example, our consumerism is changing. They will compare and buy online. All online markets change, distribution channels, and internet changes value perceptions as well. So if you look at from that perspective, if we are the ones that should raise and educate our children to become valuable people within a new digital age, we should also change our education accordingly. And our children of our youth ourselves are also changing. They prefer internet for research. They learn from images, sounds, and colors, and they communicate through social media. And if you look at Twitter, that's the most common platform to use to look for latest news. So also traditional papers are changing from the function they had. So if our children are changing, our teachers need to change accordingly. Children have all the information they want, anytime, anywhere, and teachers no longer are the experts or primary source of education. However, teachers do know where to find relevant information. They also know that sometimes information is colored and doesn't give a real objective picture of what it is portraying. So we also know how to combine and reflect on information, and to know how to learn and set personalized learning goals. So teachers, to our opinion, will become more of a learning coaches, aiming at realizing personal potential of each student. So there is a major shift going on in education. That shift is called active classroom learning. So from traditional classroom learning, where you start a lesson with a lecture in the classroom and just talk about the subject and later on applying, there is a new shift, whereas students right now can go into the internet, find about the topics themselves, learn about the topics, go into the class, and they learn how to apply and analyze this knowledge they have found online. This new shift, active classroom learning, is being researched by the Friday Institute in the United States, and their perspective is if you take active classroom learning, it will enable teachers to focus on higher order thinking skills like analyze, evaluate, and create. While traditional classroom only focuses on the first 3 layers of this Bloom model. So another shift is lifelong learning. Lifelong learning is based upon the assumption that our economies are changing rapidly throughout the years. So if our economies are changing more rapidly over the years, we should not focus on the real knowledge. Of course, it is important to focus on knowledge, but we should enable our children or our youth to learn how to learn. Because if they start a job within a few years, their job may not exist in 10 or 20 years when they have entered the marketplace. So they must be enabled to enjoy learning and to learn how to learn and to set personal learning objectives themselves. So they will have to return after to study after they have started working. There's a study, it is from Bryce and Withers, it's a study of 2003, when they have concluded that if you look at secondary education, people who have graduated from secondary education, 45% of them will return to study after they've started working. And when they have not completed secondary education, only 20% of them will return to study. So it's really vital for us to keep our students, to really motivate them to complete their secondary education and to let them enjoy their learning, make it a joyful experience. And the third shift is called autonomy, of course. That's the topics that we are discussing right now. If you look at it from a European perspective, many countries are moving towards decentralization, making schools more autonomous in their decision makers and holding them accountable for results. So we differentiate the less detailed national curriculums that has a framework for learning with goals and end terms, but there's also a thing that if you have more autonomy, most of the countries have included control systems like inspectorate and assessment systems as well. Well, countries are that they have shifted to autonomy are countries like Belgium, Estonia. Well, you see the list on the screen, and you see two countries in the red. That's Netherlands and Scotland. They've also moved to autonomy, but there is a more or less strange thing going on right there in those two countries, because although the governments have shifted towards more autonomy, you see that in those two countries the publishers have become more and more influential. They have implemented what they called learning methods. So every publisher is selling learning methods. So every teacher within every school knows exactly what to teach in what lesson or what hour of the day. So it is a shift towards autonomy, but it is really a highly detailed kind of autonomy with regard to curriculum. Only this time it has not been prescribed by the government, but it has been prescribed by the publishers. And there's of course the highly detailed national curriculum systems like Germany, Cyprus, France, Spain, Ireland and Italy. But if you look at a whole in Europe from a European perspective, you'll see that the level of autonomy increases with the age level. So in general saying, you can say that secondary education and universities have more autonomy with respect to detail, with respect to curriculum decisions as primary schools. So if you look at the changing role of the school leader, you'll see that those two topics that I've just discussed, one with regards to learning and one with regards to autonomy, they really interfere with each other. So the learning-centered leadership regards topics like the new approaches to teaching and learning, like things like active classroom learning, or another word for the same is supportive collaborative learning, and raising achievement when dealing with diversity, of course, as well. From a school autonomy perspective, like Hasso has told us, it is like running a small business. They have to manage human resources and final resources, adapting teaching programs, and be accountable for the outcome as well. So this changing role also means that the qualification must be changed as well, because well, not all teachers can just lead a school. So if you look at across Europe, the teacher or the school management qualification, if you look at the primary education, it's more or less that most of the school heads, or almost all of the school heads, have a bachelor degrees in educational science or pedagogy, and the secondary school heads, all or most of all, have a master's degree. And it's again, the professional management increases with age level. So secondary schools tend to be larger and have a management team, and primary schools tend to be relatively small. And of course, in most cases, school heads have to do everything themselves. So be the educational leader and also be the one that decides on human resources, on finance and planning as well. But if you look at the Finnish qualification, and we all know that Finnish people are doing quite well with regards to PISA scores, you see that all of the school heads have to have a master's degree. So they have to be qualified in the education sector, they have to be qualified to teach. They have to have adequate experience in teaching, so they can be the educational leader. But besides that, they have to have a certificate in educational administration. And these certificates include basic knowledge of public law, public governance, human resource management, financial policies, and educational policies. So, but if you look at autonomy, and if you look at education, we're all here just to ensure that education will improve and that we could all adapt to the new digital age. So innovation is key, because without innovation we believe that well, countries will get behind and not raise our youth to become well will lead to more productive people in digital age. So in general, age increases, school size increases, and whereas the school sizes increases, professional management increases as well, and their national attention for innovation. So you look at university level, there is no real government push to innovate. There is more or less international alliances. So you see universities working together with other universities, but there is a national initiatives like the British Council, of course from the UK, that evangelizes and also evangelizes innovation education, but it organizes events and set real ties between the universities that enable them to innovate. And if you look at primary and secondary education, many governments will lead the innovations within their country with regards to highly detailed curriculums. But the less detailed or the less prescriptive curriculums, most governments there tend to choose for a top-down or a bottom-up approach. So if you look at the countries with a less prescriptive curriculum and with a high level of autonomy, countries like the Netherlands really look at the school head to innovate their curriculum, whereas with countries with a highly prescriptive school system or a highly prescriptive educational stuff, they really need to think about how to innovate the school system, because most school heads in the Netherlands are really tight, and that also applies to a number of other countries, who really are really not equipped to innovate their school, because they're not well, they are not trained to innovate. They have become teachers and then become school heads, so they need additional training to be able to innovate their schools. So, and there's also the influences of educations, like I've already talked to before. Some publishers, they are dominant in Scotland, in the Netherlands, really do not really like to innovate the school system, because that may lead to less sales of their books and of their learning systems. So in this case, Scotland really took the lead, because the Scottish government just introduced a new junior and senior cycle that is more or less moving away from a publisher-dominated prescriptive system to a more open system. And you look at the Netherlands, there's no real push or drive from the government to make that shift from a traditional publisher prescribed system to a more open system. And of course the assessment system as well, that also plays a very big role with that one. Whereas governments tend to give a lot of autonomy to the schools, they also control the way that the teacher works by introducing assessment systems. So that's more or less a controls mechanism that has been implemented by local governments. Whereas it was of course a very positive thing that the PISA 2015 will include some of the 21st century skills, so it will not only focus on real or actual knowledge of topics as well. So if you look at the relation between innovation and autonomy, well, you see there is no clear relation, because also the countries who has a less detailed curriculum tend to innovate within their country. So if you look at the overview, you see that there is as much chance to innovate within a detailed curriculum than in a less detailed curriculum. So that is kind of interesting to see. Like Belgium with a not so detailed curriculum, they do not tend to innovate, and Norway with also a not so detailed or less prescriptive curriculum, they do innovate. Well, you can see the rest of the chart at your own screen. So best practices enabling primary schools. The thing that I'd like to say is, if you give a lot of autonomy to a school head, you would see that this autonomy also includes the workloads of a school head. So he has to be informed with human resource management, financial management, planning as well. So he has less time to become the educational lead. You see a statement of Richard F. Elmore. He's a professor of Harvard University. He says more or less that if you assign more tasks to a school head, you should also enable him to control this task as well. So he doesn't need to do everything himself, because if the school head does everything himself, he has less time for educational leadership. So there is a best practices, and that's the Dutch primary school model, whereas every school head of every school is part of a cluster of schools, and this cluster employs people who take care of human resource management, who takes care of financial planning, and so on. So educational, or the school head, can still be the educational lead on his side, on his school, to really focus on education itself. So if you look at the best practices, assessment and leadership, assessment, like I've said before, assessment really can limit the ability to innovate within a school, because assessments are there to more or less to judge schools, and if a school is highly innovative and they are not measured on their efforts, well, it may be not appealing for a school to innovate the way that they would like. Of course, Finland, as we all know, Finland is performing very well with regards to the PISA current test, and you see that Finland is moving away, is innovating their school systems, although they are perceived as being very successful with their own system. So I think that shows real great leadership from the Finnish people to also focus on 21st century skills, that only a few of those skills, 21st century skills, will be included in the PISA 2015 assessments. Another project is called the Assessment and Teaching of 21st Century Skills. That is a project that has been initiated by a number of universities and supported by companies like Cisco and Microsoft. So Microsoft, they are trying to include the 21st century skills into future PISA assessments, so that schools and also systems may be enthused to look at this new kind of skills to put into their educational system and to innovate accordingly. Well, thank you for your time. This has been my presentation. I hope you find it interesting enough to start a few discussions. And now I'll hand over to Nóra, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you very much, Fred. And actually the discussion has started already, for which I'm very happy. Hasso, I would like you to come back with us as well. And before we start discussing the questions that the participants have already raised, I would just like to do a very quick warmer. It's going to be a vote. I'm going to publish you a vote. Coming back to Hasso's question. So, at this moment, do you perceive school autonomy rather as a challenge or as a privilege? I hope the vote is now published on your screen, so you can click. And I can already see the results. Very interesting and exciting. In the meantime, I will tell you that we might not have the possibility to discuss all the questions that you raised, but the webinar is going to be published on the EPNoSL website, and that platform also allows us to discuss questions further. So there can be we can organize a forum around these questions. So if your question is not treated right here, right now, then please come to the forum discussion later. Okay, I will stop voting now and publish the results for you. So I hope you can see the results. So 22% voted, 9, so 40% said it was rather a challenge, 22% said it was rather a privilege, and 36 said it was 50-50%. Hasso or Fred, any comments on that, according to your experience?
I would say that all these votes are somehow acceptable, because having more autonomy, as Fred already stressed, it means that school head has to do much more work and is much more responsible, and also all other team members are loaded much more, because work what in another system has been done by anybody else should be done now on school level. So workload is much higher. So from one side it's challenge, but from the other side, a school can decide much more, than school can be much more flexible related to the curriculum, school curriculum, and related to the every single student, and school can better take into account children's differences and accommodate more to the local conditions. So this and that.
Thank you. Actually, it would be interesting to know who voted for a challenge. Maybe it was school heads who voted rather a challenge, and maybe it was, I don't know, researchers who voted rather a privilege. Okay, Fred, any comments?
Yes, if you look at current autonomy in Europe, it has been so a lot of school heads, a lot of schools have been given autonomy, and I think that that's a good thing. But what some governments has failed to do is to organize this autonomy. If you look at the average school head, for example, from a primary school, he has been a former teacher, and he has not been a person who manages a large number of people, initiates change and so on. So if you're going to give autonomy to schools, you've also have got to facilitate people or school heads to really lead in their role. So with regards, so they have to offer continued professional development, but they also have got to facilitate it with regards to systems. So the Dutch school systems, when they have to cluster around, and all these tasks and all these additional tasks can be distributed to other people, I think that's a very good model. So it has to be organized before you can give schools or school heads autonomy. So that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so let's start discussing the questions that the participants raised. One of them concerned student mobility among schools. So it was Nóra who raised the question whether schools with a large autonomy can result in a problem with student mobility, that it's more difficult to go from one school to another if the curriculum is, for example, very different. Some people joined her question, and also it raises the question of the validation of knowledge. How is that possible? Yuri Ginter said, or according to him, curriculum should be completely individual. Some others say that that would lead to chaos. So what is your opinion about that? Student mobility and curriculum individual or prescriptive, central, or in between? Hasso?
Yep. I'm agree that this is a question that should be solved by every country if there is a large autonomy for the schools. But it depends what we consider as final result of educational system. Is it box what is fulfilled by very limited and in different lists proved knowledge, and if the box is full, then we say that the person has been educated, or is it just certain list of different abilities and skills and some knowledge also what graduates of the schools have? If we take the last version, then it's not so big problem if schools follow different curricula and their number of math lessons or foreign language lessons are different from one year to another, and students are on different levels. Children are quite often able to handle these differences in classrooms during a year. Yes, it's hard at the beginning, but they manage very well. So I'm for large autonomy in that case.
Thank you. Actually, one of the participants said that it is the learning outcome that should be defined.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fred, any comments?
I think I absolutely agree with Hasso. If you look at our children, our youth right now, I think we should focus on enabling them to really reach their potential. And the way that every person in school can reach his potential, I think it's really value to focus on that way. So we doesn't have to put children or youth in boxes. They have to learn this thing every year, and every year and so on. So let's focus on the individual. And really think it is really hard to manage that from an education perspective. But the internet enables us to really change education as we give right now. So personal approach, I think, is absolutely preferable towards a mass, highly regulated curriculum that every student must follow.
I think that it's also strongly connected to the question of equity. And if we are fighting for equity and for the same good quality education for all, then in some way a curriculum or the learning program has to be personalized if we want to suit the needs of everyone. But let's come back a little bit to the question of educating school leaders and preparing them to deal with autonomy. It was I think Ton Duif, who raised the question of distributed leadership, that modern education systems cannot exist without distributed leadership, and this is probably also a part of preparing school heads to deal with autonomy. I would like to ask you, Fred and Hasso, can you give us some good practices in the training of school heads to deal with autonomy?
I can start. Yes, in Estonia we try to do that already at least for 10 years, but we have at least another half of the way to go to reach the final destination, because there are several temptations to everything by school head himself, and not to trust team members, not to trust teachers. And if in a large autonomy school head takes full responsibility, all tasks, then he's completely overloaded and he can't handle all those things. So it's also a question of teamwork and using a team in school leadership.
Yes, from as a perspective, if you look at Europe, I think that in most European countries that are currently innovating, there are universities who specialize in giving courses to school heads to enable them to manage a team, to do financial accounting, to do human resource management as well. But the thing is, these courses do exist in most European countries. But the question we would like to raise is, should we ask a person who's really excellent in educational management to become a general manager? So that's the basic question. So the thing that Ton Duif has presented is, if you look at distributed leadership, I think that we should use a school head to be the educational lead. He should be the one who initiates change and to lead his teachers to become even better teachers. So do we want this person who's excellent in educational leadership to become a general manager, to do human resource management, to do financial planning and so on? Or shall we just try to keep this person focused on his primary focus or his primary goal, lead the educational processes?
So what you are saying is that then there should be another person, another leader of the school who would manage the school from the financial or personnel perspective.
Yes, you could distribute some of these tasks within your teachers, but we should also try to organize a model whereas you could just outsource these kinds of tasks to specialized consultants, or do like or look at, for example, the Dutch models, where a consortium of schools so the school management within this consortium or association is really taking care of these kinds of tasks.
So it actually exists already, because I was wondering whether some of these tasks are outsourced, whether there should be a capacity in education as well. So whether this, I mean, choosing, for example, your personnel or recruitment, can that be outsourced in a school? Can that be organized by somebody who doesn't see through the learning process?
I do think so, yes, but that really depends on the budget the school system has for these kinds of tasks. So if you look at the Belgian school heads, Belgium have got a relatively high level of autonomy, but the government in Belgium really imposed a lot of administrative systems so they could control everything that goes on in a school. So these control mechanisms take that much time that a school head in Belgium doesn't have much time to really focus on the educational leadership. So I think that if you take too much of this governmental or control system in a country, that may also lead to less educational performance. But of course you can outsource these tasks, whether to consulting. There are a number of consulting companies within every country that offers these kind of services, or you can just organize this, that a number of schools together could take on these kinds of tasks.
Yeah, and that actually leads us to another question. How can school autonomy be perceived or used in a larger context? So not only at the school level, but at a larger level. Is cooperation between schools encouraged in countries where schools have a lot of autonomy? How can they make use of that autonomy to cooperate more?
I think that if you look at from the primary system, when you consider primary schools tend to be quite smaller than secondary schools. Most of them do not have a professional management besides the school head. They have to work together because a school head cannot perform all the tasks that is being expected of them. So cooperations between those kinds of primary schools, I think it's essential to do that. Because even if you look at secondary school systems as well, I think that schools also in secondary and also universities need to work together to see how they could innovate, see what works and what doesn't work. So not only from an autonomy perspective, but also from an innovation perspective. They have to learn together to try things, to make education a better thing.
Yeah, I agree with Fred. collaboration between schools is very important in that case. And as a good example, I know that here in Estonia there are some schools which have, for example, for foreign language classes, collaboration through internet to have common, for example, German lesson with Austrian class and Estonian class through internet. So such kind of collaborations are essential part of large autonomy also.
Thank you. Of course, cooperation between schools have, in some countries at least, some impediments or obstacles. For example, competition between schools for students, which in some cases can lead to problems in cooperation. Okay, there is a question here. No, where is it? Yeah. Personality of the school heads in the large autonomy schools or in the small autonomy schools more important. So, where is the personality of the school head more important? In schools with large autonomy or in schools with small autonomy?
I think that personality of school head is important in both cases. Because that personality is one of those key questions about learning environment and common culture in the school. And it doesn't depend so much about outside influences than just from local leader. Is there a friendly environment? Is it socially very well-being environment for teachers and students, or it is not? So in my mind, it's in both cases very important.
Yeah, yes, and then again, if you look at the slide, I thought it was slide number 12 that I saw, there is no real connection between level of autonomy and level of innovation. So there are schools or there are systems that have less autonomy than other systems, but are still innovating. So I think it really needs a lot of courage, a lot of personality from a school head in either system to innovate a school, because you've got to deal with teachers who are teaching or doing the same for over 5 or 10 or even 15 years. So every change, whether it's a less autonomy or a high autonomy school, really needs a very good person to lead a school on its educational aspects.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid our time is over, and I think we have discussed some very interesting, started to discuss some very interesting questions, like how can tasks be distributed in schools, especially if they have a large autonomy, what capacities we need or school heads need to deal with autonomy, whether their personality is important in any of the systems, how important it is to cooperate between schools to innovate, and I think, or I suggest, that we continue this discussion on the EPNoSL forum. You can see the link again on the screen. I would like to thank you very much, Hasso and Fred, for your presentations and the fruitful discussion, and I would also like to thank the participants to be so active, and I'm sorry for those whose questions we couldn't discuss today, but I would really like to encourage you to join the forum. Also, next week the subject of autonomy, topic of autonomy, is going to continue on the forum, and Leif Moos from Denmark is going to publish a keynote article based on which we can continue discussing this subject. So do come on the portal. I would also like to invite you for our next webinar on the 28th of May. The topic is then going to be Leading and Managing Change, and the speaker is going to be Peter Early from the UK. And so thank you very, very much again for coming, and I hope I will meet you on the forum and in our next webinar very soon. So thank you and bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.